perfect role models for kids today. Yes, we are.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience. We are live March 19th, 2006. In addition to being able to watch us on cable, the program's also recorded on MP3 and podcast, so hello to those listeners there as well. It's a live call-in public access show, a chance for atheists to interface with the community and for you to call and ask questions or express your opinions. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road. Those begin at 11:30, except for the third Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. Today was the third Sunday. We had a lecture today. I actually filled in and gave today's lecture. We'll get more information about next month's lecture, and you can find out more information about all those events and the other events at our website as well. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio program called The Nonprofits, which is hosted by Jeff D. and Dennis Lubay and co-hosted by Russell Glasser and myself. That airs every other Saturday, live, freethoughtradio.com. You can also visit nonprofitsradio.com for more information. We'll be live this coming Saturday, March 25th, and you're all more than welcome to tune in. There's also an internet relay chat service that goes along with that, so you can talk to us while we're on the air. We have a number of social events throughout the week, one example being Thursday's happy hour. We've been going to Antonio's. We're going to be going to Ninfa's starting this week. And that's at 214 East Anderson. It's near the 183 I-35 intersection. It just happens to be on the north side of 183 on the access road there, Anderson Lane, near the SPCA and a couple other things. Additionally, we're going to dinner after the show. The cast and crew get together, and we invite any of the viewers to come down and visit with us. We're going to Threadgills, which is on Riverside, and the show's off at 6 o'clock. We normally get there somewhere between 6:30 and 6:45. Any atheist-friendly people are welcome to come down and join us. If you come down to preach or proselytize or provoke, just save that. We'll have the number up for you in a couple minutes, and you can call in, and we'll take care of that then. Joining me this week, Keryn Glasser. Welcome back.
Hi, good to be on. Seems like it's been a really, really long time since
it actually has been, because you sacrificed last month's spot and Tracy came on for that. So, but she's back. You got some orders from God.
I have some orders from God. Well, my subject this week is called the 613 Commandments. And the reason I chose this subject this week is because it seems like very, very frequently when we do our show or any show or have any conversation, a lot of people call in and claim that we are a Christian nation because, or a Judeo-Christian nation, because our laws are based on the commandments. And they frequently have, the commandments are issues coming up in the state when the courts want to have a Ten Commandments monument, or any state wants to have a Ten Commandments monument somewhere on federal property, and it's not constitutional, and it goes through the court system frequently, over and over again in different states, and they so people will call in and say, well, it's not unconstitutional to have the Ten Commandments up because that's what our laws are based on. So I wanted to point out today that there are actually, and this is a subject of a little bit of debate, but 613 commandments in the Bible, in the Torah, the Old Testament, and as a matter of fact, very few of them are actually part of our law system. So I was going to go over some of them.
Cool.
Thought it would be amusing to speculate what it would be like. The particular script that I have here today, I did get off of Wikipedia, and they are structured on the list that was created by Maimonides, pulling out 613 commandments from the Torah. There is significance to the number 613, and that is, first of all, it's called the Taryag Mitzvot. Mitzvot meaning commandment in Judaism, and Taryag is an acronym that has a numeric value of 613. They believe that 248 of these are called mitzvot aseh, which is positive commandments. Do this, do this, do this.
Do good stuff.
Do good stuff. And 365, which happens to be also the number of days in a year, are the mitzvot lo tase, which lo meaning no, which means don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So, Maimonides' list. Of course, we are all pretty familiar with the first 10 commandments, or they're not even in this list, they're not actually the first 10, they actually fall randomly in the 613. But they are the most prominent, I guess, the most obvious, the most important. So I'm not going to read all 613, of course, because that would take hours, but I'm just going to highlight some.
Oh, go ahead. Read all 613. We got an hour and a half.
A lot of them are kind of clustered together, and I actually skipped a lot of the clusters, but so commandment number 9, listen to the prophet speaking in God's name. I think we actually see this a lot in politics today. People everywhere standing up saying that we need to be more doing things in the ways of God, that we need to be following the Bible more, that this constitution or that law should be changed as accordance with what it says in the Bible, it being a sin, blah, blah, blah. It is not, however, against the law to not listen to the prophet who speaks in God's name. One thing that I thought was really interesting about this particular commandment is if you skip to commandment number 43, it says not to listen to a false prophet. It also goes on to say a lot of things about what you should do to a false prophet.
I bet it has something to do with rocks.
Not specifically. I don't think I highlighted any of the things that you should do to a false prophet.
Well, it may not fall in the 613, but I'm sure somewhere it says to stone those guys.
Yeah.
Because pretty much everybody...
There's a lot of things about stoning
everybody gets stoned.
Among these six, yeah. A lot of things about stoning among these 613 commandments. But I think it's very interesting that it doesn't really, give any rules or structure for how you decide who is a false prophet and who is a true prophet. But it is the law of the Bible that you should listen to the true prophets and not listen to the false prophets. And so, how do you know? I think most of the time when somebody claims to be a true prophet and use the word prophet, we tend to put him in an insane asylum. But when they tend to be following the Bible, then we, vote for him. So, commandment number 13, love the Jews. I like that one. But I also see a lot of times, even in modern day history today, when it is not actually followed. And I do see that it is not actually against the law to not love the Jews. I was actually asked a couple weeks ago, when I met someone that found out that I was Jewish, why I killed Jesus.
Why did you kill Jesus?
I don't know. I didn't. I never even met the guy. He died 2,000 years before I was born, so I'm sorry. But
that's no excuse.
But love me, because it says so in the Bible. It is not against the law, as it says number 17 should be, to embarrass others. That's so simple. Could you imagine a world where it is against the law to embarrass others?
We'd have no Daily Show.
Yeah. We'd have no comedy, period.
Yeah.
Well, we'd have British comedy. No, we wouldn't have British comedy. Let's see. We certainly wouldn't have South Park.
No.
All right. Number 18, do not oppress the weak. Also not against the law. Number 19, do not speak derogatorily of others. Certainly not against the political law. Certainly not against, how people run most of their campaigns.
So if you found somebody who was a false prophet, could you not speak derogatorily about that false prophet?
No.
You can't accuse me of being a false prophet. That's derogatory.
Yes, well, false prophets have their own rules. I mean, it's sort of like, and this is actually a commandment, you're not allowed to commit murder, but you are allowed to stop someone even by means of murder who is pursuing you to do harm to you. So, there are exceptions to the rules, and a false prophet is exception to the rule. You are both allowed to speak derogatorily of him and murder him if need be. No, you're supposed to murder him. I don't know. Number 29, do not bear a grudge. I mean, these are so simple things that, could you imagine a world where it was against the law to bear a grudge?
I don't think it should be against the law. Good idea, though. That's another one of those good idea ones.
No. How do you judge whether or not someone is bearing a grudge?
No, I mean, it's the idea of not bearing a grudge, not harboring ill will, and letting it fester. I think that's generally a good idea.
Yeah.
That's one of those.
Wrong president. So Clinton slept with someone other than his wife. Get over it. To not make an idol for yourself. Okay, these ones I thought was really funny. I highlighted all these. 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33. Do not make an idol of yourself. Do not make an idol of others. Do not make human forms, even for decorative purposes. And to burn a city that has turned to idol worship. Okay, the TV show American Idol, against the law.
I don't know that we can burn their city, but...
Well, we'd have to burn the whole country.
Well,
they are making idols. That is their specific goal stated in their title.
But as far as crafting idols, I mean, that would definitely, if somebody were to actually try and uphold all of the commandments and they were going to uphold those, they'd be burning down Hindu cities left and right.
Not only Hindu cities, it says do not make human forms, even for decorative purposes. Right. All art museums. Any human form, period. Any statue, any painting, all those Renaissance works that are just so famous, no human forms. They're all against the law. If we were truly a Christian nation, as so many people like to claim, whose laws were actually based on the commandments, these are some things that would be against the law. Do not be afraid of killing a false prophet is number 45. So that's where we were talking about that.
Although that doesn't say you have to kill him. It just says don't be afraid of killing him.
Don't be afraid to kill him. It's okay. Number 60. I like this one. Do not be superstitious. It is against the law to be superstitious in a Christian nation, in a Judeo-Christian nation where we follow the commandments. It is against the law to be superstitious. Number 62. Do not engage in astrology.
Really?
I think that was my horoscope yesterday. This face intentionally left blank.
Number 68. Men must not shave hair off the sides of their heads.
I got it off the sides and the top.
That is against the law in a Christian nation, in a Judeo-Christian nation. I'm sorry. This is from the Old Testament, so it is actually Judeo.
Isn't that the particular law that the
Hasidic Jews have the Pesach? Yeah, that's why you see so many Hasidic Jews with the little curlicues on the side of their heads. It's from number 68. Men should not shave hair off the sides of their heads. It's okay to shave hair off anywhere else. Well, except number 69, you must also not shave your beards with a razor. So, you can cut your beard with scissors, make it shorter and more neat, but you cannot shave it with a razor. So you got to have a beard and you got to have Pesach. That's why when you see Orthodox Jews and Hasidic Jews, they all have a little Pesach on the sides of their heads and beards.
I bet some of those guys really love Nair because it got them around the razor exception.
Number 70. Men must not wear women's clothing. This is something I'm sure all those right-wing Republican Christians would love to hear drag queens are outlawed. However, number 71, women must not wear men's clothing. Come here, Andy. Oh my God, I'm wearing pants. Take me to jail. Take me to jail. I'm wearing pants.
How do you define? I mean, how do you define what's women's clothes and what's men's clothes?
Women have to wear skirts and dresses, and men wear pants. You don't mix the two. Men don't wear skirts and dresses, and women don't wear pants.
Does a kilt count as a skirt? I don't think the Jews know anything about
Scottish Jews. There probably are some somewhere. Speaking of which, I should go into a little, maybe later on we'll talk about St. Patrick's Day that we just celebrated. That's an interesting one. Do not tattoo the skin. Everybody in America who has a tattoo, that is against the law. Do not wear, we should all be wearing tefillin on our heads. That is a little box that has like prayers inside of them, I think, tefillin, so you strap it to your head. So we'd all be walking around with little boxes on our heads.
Boxes to fill in.
To fill in, right. Ha, 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 ha. Say the Shema twice daily. The Shema is a Jewish prayer that if you've ever seen a mezuzah that you keep on your door, that is another rule. You must keep a mezuzah on your door. It has a little scroll that has the Shema rolled up inside of it. You should say the Shema twice a day, or you are breaking, Jewish law, Judeo-Christian law. You should also wear tefillin on the arms. You should have a mezuzah on each doorpost. Each male must write a Torah scroll. All males should be circumcised on the 8th day after their birth. That means any man in our entire country, if we were following these 613 commandments, if we were basing our laws on the commandments of the Bible, all men would be circumcised. 96, we should all rest on the day of Passover. This whole section I like. We should all rest on the 7th day of Passover. These should all be national holidays, national days off work.
That's the best thing religion's given us in my
I know, and they're all
days
either,
off.
I guess they're all either American holidays or Christian holidays that we officially get off. We don't actually get the 1st day of Passover, the 7th day of Passover, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, Shemini Atzeret. I don't even know what Shemini Atzeret is, but we should be getting it off. We should have it as a national holiday. We should not eat chametz on the afternoon of the 14th day of Nisan. This is Passover. Chametz is anything leavened, anything that has yeast in it, anything that has been allowed more than, I think, 8 minutes to rise. So we cannot eat risen bread on Passover. We cannot have it in our house. We cannot see it. We cannot know that it exists within our possessions. It has to be completely gone, according to the law. We should all, I like this one, take up a lulav and an etrog on all 7 days of Sukkot. Sukkot is the festival of the harvest, and the lulav and an etrog are actually fertility symbols, celebrating the man's fertility symbol and the woman's fertility symbol, and you put them together and you shake them. We should all marry a wife by means of ketubah and kiddushin. I don't actually know what the translation of ketubah and kiddushin are, but I'm assuming they have something to do with matchmaking. I didn't look up the translation of that. If anybody wants to, you're welcome to call into the show. Give us feedback. Everybody under Judeo-Christian law that follows the commandments should have children with their wife. So that means anybody who has chosen not to have children, that would be against the law. I know a couple people in the ACA that just decided that they don't want to have kids, which I think is okay, because we certainly have population issues. I like this one. Du yibum, which is to marry the widow of one's childless brother. So if a man and a woman get married, and the man dies before they've had a chance to have any kids, then his brother has to marry her and have kids with her.
And that one actually was a big problem. Onan was ordered to marry his wife's brother, and he would go in and every night he would have sex with her, and then when he reached his climax, he would withdraw and spill his seed on the ground, and God killed him for that because he was avoiding that law.
Ooh, there was a really cute movie about that a little while ago with the people who cannot have children are screwed. Yes. I was just given a sign by the studio. People that can't have children, that are sterile, screwed? I would imagine that they're sterile because God was punishing them for something.
Yes. Punishing, whatever. There's already something wrong, so.
Yes. Let's see. The court must find one who sexually seduces a maiden. If somebody has sex with a virgin outside of marriage, they must be fined by the court. The rapist must marry the maiden he raped, if she chooses. I like that part. I was like, what? I don't want to have to marry a rapist if he rapes me, but it's only if she chooses. If she chooses to get married to the guy that raped her, then he has to do it, and he is never allowed to divorce her. So, you might think about who you're going to rape next time you rape her. Not to marry non-Jews. I guess this only applies to Jews. You should not marry non-Jews. But you should also accept converts. Not to eat non-kosher animals. So any animals that are not killed ritualistically and, had prayers said over them, that would be against the law to eat non-kosher animals. That would also mean that it's against the law to eat pork.
There's no kosher, don't play pork.
Number 190, commandment number 190, not to eat the meat of an animal that was mortally wounded. I like this one. That means that hunting is against the law. This would mean
No, you just can't eat what you hunt.
You just can't eat what you hunt. You're right. You can hunt for sport. You just can't eat it afterwards. You can probably take it and sacrifice it in the temple. I don't know. No, it has separate laws that say that you can't sacrifice something that's been wounded wrong. You can't eat blood. All Texans who like their steaks medium rare, raw and bloody, all the ones that like to come up to me and say, ooh, bloody hamburger, yum, blah, blah, blah. That's against the law, yes.
Your one about if you rape the girl, you have to marry her if she chooses. Mm-hmm. I guess that kind of depends on what you're reading. For example, the Talmud being explanations on the laws of the Torah and other things. But that verse comes from Deuteronomy 22, which says, if a man happens to meet a virgin who's not pledged to be married and rapes her and they are discovered, he shall pay the girl's father 50 shekels of silver, which means the price never goes up. But he must marry the girl, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. There's nothing there that says she has a choice.
Really?
Yeah, that probably comes from
sucks.
Talmudic law.
That would really suck. Yeah, Deuteronomy. I don't like that. Yeah, actually, and this source that I'm using, he happens to have a Bible next to him that he's very well versed in. That's great. I'm using this off Wikipedia. The title was 613 mitzvot. I also have one that's 613 commandments. But the one that says 613 mitzvot does actually cite where in the Bible it says all these things.
Yeah. And it's right. It's just one thing to remember is that, yes, this is a Judeo-Christian nation, and there's a big excuse among Christians about why they don't have to follow all of this. Jesus came and provided a new covenant, and now we're no longer, bound by all of those commandments. We've tossed all that out. Doesn't make much sense because they're more than willing to prop up the first 10 of them as an icon to what they believe and everything else. So it's kind of an arbitrary, we're going to take these and use some of them and not use some of them, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of apologetics about it.
The big book of multiple choice, right. They say, well, it's okay for us to have the first 10 up here because this is a Judeo-Christian nation, but the other 613, they don't apply to us because we don't want them to. Now, okay, I'm on number 213 here of 613. We get to the first 3 laws in this entire thing that I've been reading that are actually against the law right now.
We should actually go ahead and put the number up because we're closing in on 5 o'clock, and we'll keep going through this and let you guys go ahead and call in. As a reminder, this is a live call-in program. You can call and talk about this. You can call and talk about other topics if you want. Anybody who doesn't get through on the air, doesn't want to talk on the air, can email tv@atheist-community.org, and you can visit our website as well at www.atheist-community.org. And so after 212 or so, we're now up to the first ones that are actually
against
US
the law.
laws.
Okay,
right.
So 213, to swear in God's name to confirm truth when deemed necessary by the court.
That's kind of a law.
It's kind of a law?
Yeah, it's actually against the law for them to force you to swear in God's name. If you're called to testify and you're in court or whatever else, you can say, I'll affirm, I'll, swear my oath, whatever, on my own name. It's actually against the law for them to force you to swear in God's name. But It's common.
Okay, so it is common to stand up and say, do you swear on the Bible that you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? But it's not actually against the law to refuse that. Okay, so then I was wrong. Number 213 is not against the law. It is not a law. Okay, number 214, to fulfill what was uttered and to do so with avowed, to do what was avowed. So basically, you have to tell the truth. If you swear to tell the truth, you got to tell the truth. You cannot break oaths or vows. And then, of course, it goes on to, if you do that, you'll be punished. You have to be punished by the court.
Yeah, a lot of that depends on what kind of oath or vow you're talking about. Like I could promise to buy you dinner tonight in Welch and not really have to do anything about it.
Number 236. This one's interesting and controversial. To not crossbreed animals.
Oh, no.
In some ways, superficially, this might be kind of like what Bush is talking about, that he doesn't want to do any, I don't know, what was that, human-animal hybrids?
Yes.
That he said in the State of the Union address?
Because that's right around the corner.
Right, because that's right around the corner. But if you think about it, okay, this was actually more recently than when it was originally aired, but I was watching television and the 3-2-1 Contact came on television. Do you remember that show?
The kids show?
Yeah, it's a kids show, 3-2-1 Contact, and I thought, gosh, I remember loving this show when I was a kid. I think I'd watch it. It was horrifying because it was actually, they were interviewing a cattle farm. Well, I mean, most people wouldn't find that horrifying. It's just me. I think it's gross. And they were talking about how they're trying to crossbreed, I guess, Angus cows, which are what we most commonly eat because they're big and full of meat, with this specific kind of East Indian cow that is very resistant to disease. So, they're trying to crossbreed them for the purpose of, okay, then we can have this, big full of meat cow that is also resistant to disease. So, but agricultural things like that would be against the law according to Judeo-Christian.
Sure.
613 commandments.
And all of the dog breeds that we currently have.
All the dog breeds. Every dog breed. Well, except for the purebreds, which are some kind of scary animals. But it also says, any kind of cross-pollination of plants, they also practice that for the same reasons. That's all against the law. It would be against the law to, when you plant a field, you have to leave four corners unharvested for the poor. So the poor should be able to come and gather food from the four corners of your fields. I'm sure we don't do that. We should not withhold charity from the poor. I'm going to say this for all welfare programs that Bush is just so diligently trying to cut out of the whole system, because he wants to line their own pockets or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a political tangent. But I mean, it would be law that we have to give charity to the poor. As a law, that would mean it would have to be governed by government.
Yep.
Not, we're going to not tax you so that theoretically we'd hope that you would give your own money to churches and stuff. But no, this would be a law. This would be, we have to take your money and give some of it to the poor because that is the law. All right. During the 7th year, every 7 years, you're not allowed to do any planting or farming or growing, and if anything grows just kind of haphazardly by accident, you're not allowed to harvest any of that stuff. You have to give the land a rest every 7 years.
That's actually, it's not a law, but it's used.
Is it?
Well, it's in many different ways. There's crop rotation where you plant different crops in a field each year.
That's
so
not allowed.
Destroy no, you can have multiple fields, and this one I could plant for 6 years. If you had 7 fields, one would be resting each of the
No, I
years.
think crop rotation, though, means that, say you plant corn here this year, then next year you're going to plant corn here and tomatoes here.
Right.
So that's not resting the land. You're not allowed to do anything with that land.
What I'm saying is you could have 7 fields, and each year one of them is not doing anything, and you would still be allowed to harvest from the other 6. You just rotate which of the 7 is on rest.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, sure. Do they do that?
There are things like that because it's a good idea to you can basically roach the soil by seeping all the nutrients out of it by constantly farming and tilling and fertilizers and everything else. So yeah, giving the land a rest is a good thing.
Okay. Number 287. Number 285, it gets to this also during the 7th year when you are giving the land a rest. You release all loans. So anybody that has a loan from you is now released of their obligation. So every 7 years. So anybody that has a student loan, anybody that has a college loan, anybody that has a business loan, a house loan, all loans are wiped clean every 7 years.
And I don't know this for a fact, but I think that may be in part, the basis for having a statute of limitations of 7 years on a number of crimes and debts and bankruptcy and things like that. They all run about 7 years.
I see. So like your credit report, that's why after 7 years, things drop off your credit report.
Yeah, and I think that...
But all those house loans, I just bought a house and I'm going to be in debt for the next 30 years of my life, you know, according to this law, that should be dropped after 7 years, and whatever I haven't paid is just forgiven. Number 287, as a consequence of this, also says, let's say it's been 6 years, 6.5 years, and I come to you and I say, I want to buy a house. You say, you are not allowed to say, well, it's about to be 7 years when I have to forgive all loans, so I can't give you that house. You have to wait until the 8th year. No, they can't do that. You have to give them the loan anyway.
So you come in on the last day.
So I can come on the last day, say, I need a loan to buy a house. They have to give it to you.
Free.
And then 1 day later, it has to be forgiven.
It sounds, it's kind of like the same kind of scam that that White House guy was running. Did you see that?
No.
He would go into Target and buy something, take it out to his car, take it home, whatever, and then come back in with the receipt, pick up another one of those items off the shelves, go over to the return counter and say, hey, I'm bringing this back, can you regret? So, you know, you'd get it for free.
Yeah, I've seen a couple TV shows that had something like that going on. It's part of their plot. But we could go to callers if you want.
Yeah, let's go. We'll go and start taking calls. We've got, is it William?
Hello.
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 Yeah, first of all, what's the name of these laws that y'all are talking about?
I'm sorry?
Like y'all mentioned 613 laws or something.
There's 613 commandments in the
It's
Bible.
coming from the Bible.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, well, like, I want to talk about how some people want to make, like, the U.S. bound by biblical law. Have you heard of, like, it's called Christian reconstructionists or something like that.
Yeah, there are several movements that would like to see more biblical laws as governmental laws, yeah.
Well, but I'm saying, how do you figure which ones make the cut or not? Like what y'all talking about, the one with the loans being forgiven, I'm sure that one wouldn't make it.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's really just pick and choose the way they do it. They pick the ones they like and they throw out the ones they don't like. Like these 613, they're actually debatable. There's certain rabbis who, you know, try to narrow it down, and it's hard to say which of these things in the Bible count as those 613 commandments that there allegedly are, or is it that, you know, anything that God tells to anybody on any day, even if it's just a temporary thing and it's not like, you know, applies to all people for the rest of eternity, do those count or do they not count? So it is kind of an arbitrary number. But, you know, then if you hear something that you don't like, if a Christian hears something that they don't like we have to forgive all loans, they'll step in and they'll say, oh, but, you know, Jesus, you know, wiped all those clean and then provided us with new laws, so those don't actually apply to us.
Yeah, it's really that. I mean, that's really the whole issue, and it's one of the things that's important about what Keryn's bringing up is that if these really are all God's laws, if there is a God and these are His laws, and we're expected, or there are people who want to push God's laws upon everybody, then you have to take them all. Because as soon as you start picking and choosing, it's no longer God's laws, it's man's laws, because you're just going through and saying, hey, we like these, we don't like these. Well, if you're willing to do that, why bring the Bible or God's law into it all? Chuck all that crap, come up with an idea, hey, we should have a law like this, and it's a good idea because, and then actually support the reasoning behind why you want a law, and make it a law, and, you know, get a vote on it.
So where do y'all find this in the Bible? Like, where would you find this whole list?
Mostly Deuteronomy.
Okay.
If you, like I said, if you go to wikipedia.com on the internet and you type in the 613 minutes vote, it outlines them all and it cites every single one of them from the Bible. Some of them are from Deuteronomy, some of them are from Leviticus.
Yeah, they're all from the Torah.
They're all over. But it'll cite them if you want to look up the original source.
Yeah, okay. Then, like y'all talking about the 10 commandments, there's actually like 3 versions of the 10.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you pick which one you put, like, and courthouses and things like that.
And that's, I mean, you know.
I know
it's
how to
up
pick. Don't put any of them up.
Right. You know, they like to say, and it's usually the Christians that are standing up and saying, we want these 10 Commandments up there, and therefore they want the Christian version of the 10 Commandments
Or
up.
the Protestant version, actually,
or
because the Catholic version is
but they don't
different
want
as well.
the Islamic version up, and they don't want the Jewish version up, and they certainly don't want any pagan commandments up, or any Buddhist commandments up, or any Sikh commandments up. They, you know, you could take all these different religions, if they're trying to say it is our religious right, or whatever it is,
Right.
you know, no, they want their version up and nobody else's.
All right, two last things. One, what's y'all's opinion on why Christians will, like, even if it's like a plain black and white Bible verse that's kind of negative or outright bad, they won't acknowledge that at any point? And two, why is it that, in your opinion, that basically homophobia is kind of allowed and embraced in the Bible and then also by Christians? That's it.
Okay. Whoops. We're going to let you go and answer that. As far as the negative verses that they don't acknowledge, there are some who acknowledge them. You know, for example, when you're talking about like the verse that says, if a man lies with another man, it's an abomination and he should be killed. There are fundamentalist Christians like Fred Phelps and some others who not only acknowledge it, they're extremely vocal about it. Most Christians tend to kind of set that aside because their focus is on the New Testament. There's this idea that, and this idea existed in antiquity. There were Christians who said, you know, the Old Testament is outdated and barbaric, and we don't want anything to do with it. They were branded as heretics because you can't have a New Testament. You can't have a Messiah without the Jewish messianic prophecies and things, which oddly enough Jesus didn't fulfill anyway. But you can't have one without the other. And when you have Jesus saying, if you believed Moses, you would believe me. If you have Jesus talking about how, you know, the Old Testament is an authority, you can't just chuck it aside. But they try to. They want to focus on what they think is the good and not worry so much about those bad things that are in the Old Testament.
But there are some people that they even take the bad things and they say, well, you know what? If God commanded it, then it must be, you know, like there's some, see, this is the difference between people who are religious and people who are not religious. For people who are not religious, we agree, we understand murder is bad. For religious people, they say murder is bad. I agree, murder is bad because God says murder is bad. But if God turned around and said, well, maybe murder is good, then, well, God's always right. So, you know, I just saw, it was posted on the TV list, Soldiers in the Army of God. I rented it on Netflix. It is a documentary of the Army of God, which is this organization that brings together people who are militant Christians that go around bombing abortion clinics and killing abortion doctors and lighting abortion clinics on fire and doing all this crime and violence. It actually followed them around. It had one-on-one access to the people that are involved in this group. It interviewed this guy who was on death row for killing 2 abortion clinic doctors, you know, and talked to him, and he was not remorseful at all because God commanded him to do that. And when he got sentenced to death by electric chair, they said, you know, he said, and now I feel like, you know, I'm going to die in God's name. What a privilege for me, you know, because I got to die, you know, fulfilling God's law and fulfilling, you know, God's commandment. And, you know, that I guess kind of makes him a martyr. Do Christians have martyrs?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Christians have martyrs.
Christians had the first martyrs.
You're right.
Justin
Jesus,
Martyr.
Jesus was a martyr, right.
Well,
okay.
Justin Martyr.
Justin?
Church father, that's where the name comes from.
Oh.
He was martyred for his faith. But
oh, okay. So yeah, so like, you know, it was really very scary because it was all these people, like this one guy who I guess was, you know, one of the people that kind of organizes this group. And the police came to him and were talking to him about it because he was very open about that he thinks it's okay to kill abortion clinic doctors. So they came to him and they said, do you have any plans to kill abortion clinic doctors? And he said, well, no, I really don't think I'm ever going to murder someone. I don't think that I would ever do that. Unless God came to me and told me that I should, in which case I would.
well, you know, I mean, most Christians would in order to be honest to their faith, say, yes, if God told me to kill somebody, I'd have to. I mean, how could you possibly deny that? If you know for sure, I mean, if God actually shows up and says, I need you to go kill him, are you going to say no to God? I mean, that's just absurd. Whereas we don't see it happening except with crazy people for some reason. It seems that every time somebody does something bad in the name of religion, they weren't a true Christian, or, you know, God wasn't really talking to them, but, you know, God talks to Falwell and Robertson and whoever until they say something stupid, and then all of a sudden God's not really talking to them anymore.
Right, and that goes back to those commandments, like, all right, are you listening to them because they're true prophets, or are you not listening to them because they're false prophets? How do you know? Are they only true prophets if you agree with them?
Yep. You gotta, I guess, you know, and you can't, you could probably, like, make an argument that you need to listen to your preacher or your rabbi in order to tell you who the false prophets are, but how do you know your preacher and your rabbi are right? So.
How do you know they're true prophets? They're not, they don't claim to be prophets, but.
Let's, we'll go on to Jody. Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Let me ask you something.
Yes. Yes?
You avoiding reality?
No.
That's a load of crap.
I have no idea what he was saying.
He said, are we avoiding reality because this is all a load of crap? I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. If we stayed and asked him more clarification questions, maybe he thought that we were saying that this really is the law, but maybe he was just, maybe he's just
This
ranting.
is what Karen's actually talking about. She's just talking about
I'm not saying this is real
things
law.
from the Torah and from the Old Testament,
Yes.
the Christian Old Testament, Jewish Torah.
These really are.
This would be law if it were a Judeo-Christian nation. If we were really following what the Bible says God wants everybody to do, these would be laws. They're not. That's pretty much it. I don't know about personally, I think that the whole, you know, are you avoiding reality thing really comes down. A lot of people want to, you know, they don't necessarily understand atheism. They want to, you know, how can you say this and what justification there is? But then they ask questions and don't want the answers. One of the things we talked about in the show is there were some people who were asking, you know, if everybody was aware that I was an atheist because I wasn't actually out as an atheist to my parents. And that's happened. That happened actually this past week, and it was nice to see that, you know, things are going to be fine. There was some interest in actually finding out what the hell is it that he means when he says he's an atheist, but there hasn't actually been big discussion. But, you know, we get a lot of calls where it's just, how can you do this and hang up, you know, or you're going to hell, and if you got a question, call in and ask us, and we'll do our best to answer it. But
If you're just trying to make a statement, I guess that's your prerogative. If you're trying to actually ask a question that you really want an answer to, we're happy to give it to you.
And for William and the others, as a reminder, any atheist or atheist-friendly people, you're welcome to join us at Threadgill's after the show down on Riverside. We'll normally get there between 6:30 and 6:45.
Let me just quickly skim over these next couple of pages. These next couple of pages have lots and lots and lots of laws attached to what are the rights and responsibilities of the Levites and the Kohen. Now, these were some of the 12 tribes of Israel, right? And there are some sort of elevated status. The Kohens are the high priests. And the Levites, I'm not sure who they were, but they were special. I guess they were statesmen or something like that. But I don't know what. Somebody's giving me hand symbols and I have no idea what it said.
They were lawgivers.
Lawgivers. Okay, they were lawgivers. Okay, yeah, so they were basically government, but the Levites were the lawgivers and the Kohen were the high priests. What this means, really, is anybody today, theoretically, whose last name is Cohen or Levi or Levi, comes from this line, this heritage line.
Eugene Levy.
That name's familiar. I can't place it. Why? Who's he?
He's Ghostbusters, Animal Pie,
yeah.
American Pie,
Eugene
etc.
Levy. Oh, him. Oh, I love him. Yes, he cracks me up. Eugene
We're
Levy.
going to put him in charge.
Yes. No, and I know tons of people whose last name are Cohen, Christian and Jewish. theoretically, they all derived from this line. Now, my boyfriend was telling me, oh, that's silly. They don't all come from that line. I mean, there's like a bazillion Smiths, and they don't all come from the same family. Well, Smith is different. That whole brand of last name, that whole version of last name doesn't come from what tribe you're in. That comes from what profession you were.
Right.
And that's why there's so many Smiths, is because somewhere along their line, in their history, in their lineage, their family were a family of Smiths. And back in the day, that was a very, very common profession to have. You know, a lot of people were goldsmiths, metalsmiths, silversmiths. You were a Smith. And that's how you got the last name of Smith. But Levite, and Kohen, or any derivation thereof, theoretically comes from this very prestigious line. And there's all kinds of rules about who they're supposed to marry, what land is supposed to belong to them. They're supposed to have their own cities, counties, towns, governments. They're supposed to have all this free access, all these I have pages and pages of rules that specifically apply to anybody whose last name is Cohen or Levy.
They got to have a special synagogue too, and instructions on how to build everything.
Okay, so we can take another call.
Sure. Is it John?
Yeah, how are you guys?
Good. How you doing?
Hi.
Doing pretty good. I had first a statement and then a question. First of all, this is regarding to the first 10 minutes of the show. I think it's very false, and just to state, I'm not Christian, I'm agnostic. I do believe there is a higher power, but I don't believe you can judge a religion by its followers, the people who practice it, because they're obviously flawed and they're not going to be a perfect representation of whatever
what criteria would you recommend
they're representing.
What criteria would you recommend to judge a religion by?
I would probably say just the principles of the religion itself.
Okay, so how you make a determination as to whether or not the principles of this religion match your own principles?
I'm not trying. What do you mean by that? I'm not trying to match them to my principles. I'm simply saying you cannot judge the Christian religion by Christians or the Buddhist religion by practicing Buddhists. You have to kind of go to the source of what the religion says and what it represents.
Okay,
I had a question.
I think in a way,
had you guys, as atheists, explain just the origin of matter and existence in the universe? And that's all I really have. Thanks.
Okay. We're going to let you go and answer that offline. As atheists, with regard to your first cause origin thing, we don't have an answer. Atheism is just a lack of belief in a God, which means the rest of the questions are up to the individual atheist as to how they answer them and how they go about it. For me, there are scientific explanations which represent the best answer we have now, and that can always change. And the short answer is we don't know, and we may never know. We can, come up with best guesses and good ideas and interesting scientific explanations, and we hold those as tentatively the best answer.
And some good history and illustrations and explanations of how people came to discover things like matter and gravity and energy and all that kind of stuff. I actually TiVo Nova, TV show Nova. It's an educational program, and I find their explanations very, very easy to understand. They're well illustrated. They're easy to kind of retain the concepts. I saw a very, very interesting episode recently called The Ghost Particle. Have you heard of the ghost particle?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fascinating. And it goes through, there was one that was just called, the title of the show was called E equals MC squared. But in order to understand E equals MC squared, they went through the entire history of how people discovered energy and mass and the speed of light and the concept of to square something. And it went through all that history and all those people that were involved in coming up in discovering those concepts. And it illustrated, how they learned that there was actually something, there was something called energy that was sort of driving things around, forcing things around, and magnetism and all that kind of stuff. And it showed the scientific tests that were involved in discovering those.
And the good thing is that, while we can take an answer as tentative, whatever, if we have an explanation for something, if we later find out that we were wrong, we are not dogmatically bound by some guy in the sky to never be able to change our mind. So now, new information, science changes, the explanation changes, and we can change our mind.
So
it's kind of okay to say you don't know or you're not completely sure yet.
And that's the thing, is what we're doing is we are observing the world and the laws of science and physics and logic and what makes sense, and saying this seems like it makes sense. So I kind of think that that's probably how things are. If I learn later on that something else makes more sense, or there's a factor that's thrown in that makes it not actually make sense, then I'll believe and understand that doesn't make sense anymore, you know? But
a lot of times there'll be the claim of, well, there has to be some explanation for it. Well, absolutely, I completely agree with you. There has to be some explanation for it. Nothing says you have to know that explanation right now. And by claiming God did it, or that you absolutely know that there's a creator who created all of this, who was the uncaused first cause, you're asserting a position which you cannot prove or demonstrate. You have no reason to support it. So we'll go on to Joe.
Hi, Matt and Keryn.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great. I just wanted to respond to your last caller.
Okay.
Your last caller said that basically that religion should not be judged by their followers. Now, to me, this is a completely bizarre statement, because I don't think there's anything better to use to judge a religion.
Well, that was kind of the point that I was originally going to try and get to.
Ah, good. I knew we agreed on that, but, if you take the people away from a religion, what are you left with? An idea written down somewhere, essentially. In order for that religion to come to fruition at all as a religion, I believe people have to be involved at some point and have to actually take actions based on their beliefs in that religion. Otherwise, that religion really isn't even a religion as compared to the religions that are involving people.
There's really two concepts. There's the religion as the idea, which you can evaluate. And you can say, do the tenets of this religion, do the beliefs that this religion, this concept, do they agree with my own? Do I think those are good ideas? And that way you can determine whether or not you agree with that religion or be a follower of it. Then there's also religion as it's practiced, and that's a second thing. And to me, when I'm evaluating, when I go through and make a determination about Christianity, it's twofold. I consider both the core tenets as I understand them, or as different sects explain them, and then also, what do the believers do? What do they practice? You can always make the claim that, well, those aren't the true Christians. Well, they're not practicing what they preach. And yes, I wouldn't judge Christianity based on individuals who say they're Christians and practice something which is inconsistent with the core of the religion.
Yeah, but
I think you can judge both.
No, but I mean, the thing is, you most often hear that argument when there's somebody out there that's doing something really crazy, and the vast majority of people don't agree with it and think that it's wrong and bad and want to isolate him and say he's not a true Christian. But if you're using that argument to say that it's not based on the people, it's based on the religion, I guess, I don't know, the writing, the scriptures. If you go to the Skeptics Annotated Bible, you can see, .com online, you can see all these places where it says God commanded people to murder, God commanded people to pillage, God commanded people to rape. Was it Lot who God commanded his daughters to get him drunk and rape him?
Wow, that wasn't, God didn't tell them to. They did that themselves.
Oh,
it's
really?
Just God didn't say anything
Oh,
wrong
okay.
with it.
And all these places where there's hypocrisy and just things that most people would think of as evil and bad and wrong. I mean, this army of God, theoretically, they're following the Bible. So you take the people out of it, you're actually also taking away the ones that say that it's about loving your neighbor and being non-judgmental and doing unto others as you want them to do unto you. You're taking away those people, and you're leaving the parts of the Bible that say that it is okay to rape and steal and kill and murder and do all these bad things, because you can find all these places written down in the scriptures where God commanded people to do that. You can turn it, people are always saying, oh, but that person's not a true Christian. Well, if you're following the writing, you can just as easily say Christianity is actually evil. It's the people that follow it that sometimes are good.
Well, You know, we're constantly told by believers, whether they're Christians, Jews, or Muslims, whenever we bring up the misbehavior of some of their fellow religionists, they'll sometimes say, well, that wasn't a real Christian, or that wasn't a real Jew, or that wasn't a real Muslim. And hearing that so much, we eventually have to decide that the only person who can really decide who is and who is not a Christian is the individual talking about themselves. Otherwise, any other group or group of people or church or any other religious law that applies to this question, it's moot. It's irrelevant because each individual is the best judge of themselves.
Which really means that in America there are, 65 million different kinds of Christianity.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't have to misbehave or act immorally in order for some other Christian within your religion to declare that you're not a real Christian simply because you're a different denomination.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
Yep.
Anyway, thanks a lot. Great show.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank
I'll
you.
be watching. Have a great day.
Whoops. The phone thing's acting up.
Yeah, you're
Let's
having-
go to, is it JR?
Hello, my question is, if you say that humans have evolved from animals, then why isn't there any newscast, that where the news broadcaster is talking about some fish sprouting arms and legs?
Okay. It's your question's kind of similar to a couple others that I talked about recently. One is, if man evolved from apes, why are there still apes? And I won't believe in evolution until a dog gives birth to a bird. They're all along the same things, and they all result from a very serious misperception about evolution. If man evolved from ape, why are there still apes? It's because man didn't evolve from today's apes. Man and ape evolved from a common ancestor. At least that's the standard evolutionary theory, and there's mountains of overwhelming evidence to support this. Evolution isn't a ladder. Man isn't more evolved than an ape. A man and today's ape are equally evolved along different paths. We egotistically, and for good reason, can look at it and say we have evolved traits which we believe to be better, but it's not a matter of more evolved. And evolution is very small changes over long periods of time. There's nothing about evolutionary theory that would imply that a dog could give birth to a bird, or that. But what you're specifically addressing, with growing an extra appendage, those type of mutations do happen on occasion. And you're asking why they aren't reported on the news. I've seen two-headed snakes on the news. That's the same type of mutation you're talking about.
Well, but also there's other things. I mean, there are people born with tails.
Yes.
Frequently. No, not frequently, but,
Well,
there are people...
It's 1 in 100,000.
Our appendixes are much smaller than theoretically they originally were.
There are people born without appendixes.
There are people born without appendixes now. They are kind of being phased out of the human genome.
So you're saying that these rays from the sun causes this?
What?
When did we say anything remotely like that?
I never said
I heard you make a comment last week that the reason why there's human life is because of the energy from the sun.
Well, you're kind of misphrasing what was said last week, but there was a discussion of, in a roundabout way with regard to the second law of thermodynamics and where does the energy enter the system, and that's from the sun. The sun providing energy and warmth and sustaining life, etc. I don't think it applies to what you're trying to talk about.
Well, why do you think there's a holy war going on with these eastern countries right now?
because they're both really petty.
What are they going to war? What are these men going to war and fighting?
They are going to war fighting their view of religion, that they think that everybody, or they're going, actually a lot of times they're really going to war over land. They both think that this piece of land that just happens to be like this big, it's about the size of New Jersey, should belong to them and nobody else. I think it's really petty myself. I am Jewish, but I don't necessarily say that I think that Israel is right in this war. I don't think any of them are right.
There's all kinds
And
of
these people are fighting over land, and they're calling this a holy war.
They are calling it a war.
Well, there's
What's so holy about land?
There's holy wars all the time. It's not a matter of being holy about man. They're talking about wars of competing religious beliefs.
They're talking about wars in the name of the religion that they believe in. They call it a holy war. That doesn't make their religion automatically true because they're fighting each other. That means that they have different opinions, and they're fighting each other based on who's right on those opinions and who is going to be the only person that's allowed to have that opinion.
Okay, if you've done so much research on the Bible, wouldn't you have read the part where it says in the end times there will be death and destruction?
Yes, I've read that part. I've read every part of it.
Do you see what's going on now?
Yes. And you don't think that this same death and destruction has been going on virtually nonstop in little cycles since the dawn of man? See, well, every time, throughout every time period, there's been somebody saying we're in the end times. Eventually, one of you, I suppose, could be right, although I don't happen to believe you'll be right within the same context of your religious beliefs. But sure, the world may end someday, and the guy who the day before said the earth is about to end, he's going to be right. But everybody who said it every week for the eternity that came before that was wrong.
Well, I suppose it's easy to talk about things that you really don't understand, or to make jokes and comments about stuff that you really haven't have any evidence over.
I'm
not making claims that aren't supported by evidence. Anything I've said is supported by evidence.
Here's an example. 1999, I went to Israel on my own little personal exodus with a college group of over 2,000 Jewish students from all over America. We chartered flights from LA and New York, and we all went to Israel together. When I signed up for this trip, there were about 25 students from my university that were going to go on this trip. A couple weeks before we were supposed to leave, there started being some bombings in Israel and Syria, and everybody except for 2 of us from my university dropped out. And it was a really hard decision. My family was giving me pressure to put it off and go another time. But ultimately, I decided, you know what? If I wait for there to be peace in the land of Israel before I go visit it, I'm never going to go. Because there's been war in Israel for the last 6,000 years, and I don't plan on living that long. So I went, and I had a really good time, But there has never been a time when there's not been war in the land of Israel.
So what you're saying, you went over here to Israel to see if you would find this peace?
No, I went to Israel to visit Israel.
To visit Israel for what cause?
Because I wanted to see Israel.
You've never been to a museum or gone on vacation or wanted to look into your history or your roots or anything?
Where are you from? What's your ethnicity?
My ethnicity?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that comes from a long line of things,
Such as?
Such as ethnicity, ethics, you see.
What?
That's a whole nother show.
Well, I mean, do you come from Germany? Do you come from Ireland? Do you come from Africa? Do you come from, just give me one example.
I'll tell you this much. I didn't come from some ape or some fish.
Okay.
Well, my example here that I was trying to get at is, let's say that caller, happened to come from Africa, Mexico, Italy, name one, Some point in your life, let's take me personally. My ancestry comes mostly from Russia and Germany. I do think it would be really cool sometime in my life to visit Russia and Germany. Just see what it's like, see where my family comes from. That's kind of also part of the reason why I visited.
That still doesn't explain
why I wanted to visit Israel?
How you breathe and how you live, how you exist.
What? We weren't even talking about that. Sorry?
Ethics doesn't really explain how you exist.
Nobody was talking about ethics. She asked about ethnicity.
Oh, ethnicity. Okay.
Yes.
But regardless, even you've called this several times, and you've talked about things like this before. You never really get to a point where you say what it is that you believe or the evidence that supports it. All you do is make an assertion.
Okay.
Just like a minute ago, you said I didn't come from no ape or fish. Well, I didn't either. I came from my parents who weren't apes or fish. But if you trace the line back far enough, evolutionary theory supports that. You obviously have some other theory that Do you believe that at some point some divine being just created humans as they pretty much exist today?
No, sir. I'm just going by what my eyes see. You know,
Okay.
I see things that man couldn't have possibly created himself.
Like what?
Look up at the moon. Look at the clouds.
Nobody's claiming that
Stuff like
man
Did
created.
man create that?
Nobody's claiming that man created the moon.
Okay.
You have some fundamental misperceptions about evolution and abiogenesis. I'd recommend that you visit talkorigins.org or one of the other sites. Look up a little bit of information. Figure out what it is that you believe. Because if you're believing that it's impossible for man to have created the moon, I'm with you 100%. That's not possible.
Additionally, I'd just like to point out that I found that the caller that just called in, I would say something and he would ask a complete non sequitur having anything to do with anything I'd been talking about. Like, so you visited Israel. How does that prove that
You can breathe and you're alive.
You can breathe. I'm like, what? Okay,
Yeah.
so if, I really take this show seriously. I enjoy talking about it. But, if you want to know what I think, feel free to ask me. But, don't ask me why I think oranges are round because of the color of my eyes,
Let's go on to Steve.
Yeah, hi.
How you doing?
I want to say something about the comment someone made about not judging a religion by the people that follow it. And this is more of a personal kind of a thing, but my grandfather is somebody that I really respect. He's no longer alive, but he was somewhat religious, and I in a sense, everything I believed was what the Christian religion represented probably could be categorized as stuff that he said it represented.
Right.
And that's where I got it all from. And I have come to a point where, I don't necessarily believe that anymore, but I still would say a whole lot of what I got from that person is what I really am built out of and what I think is my morality and where I got a lot of who I am from. And in a sense, if you could name the religion my grandfather's religion, I would say I'm still a follower of it in a sense. Not the beliefs, but the showing how to live and, just the way he approached people and things. So
how you value things and what you find important, how you treat other people, those types of ethical, your ethical upbringing. Yeah, definitely.
I think that could be a really good subject for a book. You should write a book on that subject called
I don't know
The
that I could
Religion
do
of My
that.
Grandfather.
Yeah, but so I actually think people make great examples of what are the implications of living a certain way, maybe taking on certain beliefs, but then their take on it and how they actually do it. These are actual examples of what people do with ideas and beliefs. They are a great way to judge whether those are good or bad, I think. And
yeah. I think, like I was saying before, I think it's twofold. You can judge the practice, and you can judge the concept, and you can judge them both together as well. But yeah, that's a great point, and a lot of it comes from a lot of us our religious beliefs begin with what we're taught as kids. Mm-hmm. You're not raised by two Baptists, and at 10, all of a sudden you're a Muslim. I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Well, thanks a lot for calling, and as a reminder to you or any of our other guests who might want to join us for dinner after the show, we'll be going to Threadkills down on Riverside. The show's over at 6 o'clock. We normally get there between 6:30 and 6:45. Any atheist-friendly people, welcome to join us. And as a reminder, on Thursdays we have Atheist Happy Hour. We're going to be moving that from Antonio's to Nympha's, 214 East Anderson. It's on the north side of 183 on the access road. So, quick reminder there. Let's go to Michael. How you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. I just wanted to comment on something one of the previous callers said. I'm trying to explain the origins of the universe. Explaining the origin of everything we see by postulating the existence of a God doesn't explain anything because you still don't explain where God came from.
Yeah,
it's a meaningless explanation.
Yep.
That's all I wanted to say.
All right.
Thanks.
Great.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for calling.
I completely agree, and I bet I've said it 1,000 times. God did it is the biggest non-answer in the universe, which I guess would almost prove that the God exists, to be the biggest, something biggest in the universe. It's kind of a joke on the ontological proof, but you had more.
I have more stuff. We're only about halfway through.
613. There's a lot to look at.
We're only about halfway through the commandments, and of course I'm skipping around. But
we'll go ahead and put the number back up and open it back up to calls as Keryn goes through some more of the 613 commandments.
Okay. Once again, the topic that I've been talking about is that there are 613 commandments in the Bible. We get a lot of calls from callers that claim that we are a Judeo-Christian nation. And the proof of that is that our laws are based on the Bible. So I was pulling up all 613 commandments in the Bible and discussing how many of them actually, in fact, are not commandments as compared to how many of them actually are. So number 377 says that you should burn incense every day. So, so burn incense every day or you're breaking the law. And then all these lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of the next couple of mitzvot talk about various different kinds of sacrifices and offerings and how they should be killed and what you should do with their blood and how you are to present them and where you're supposed to bring them and who's supposed to bring what and how much of what you're supposed to bring, blah, blah, blah. So it goes on and on about sacrifices and offerings. As a matter of fact, most of us don't actually do sacrifices and offerings anymore. So in a true Judeo-Christian country, we would all be breaking the law because we never sacrifice anything anymore.
Well, see, now that one is where we get back to the Christians who claim that we no longer have to do blood sacrifices because Jesus was the ultimate blood sacrifice for sin, and that's the only law out of all the laws that Jesus
A lot of them aren't blood sacrifices, though. A lot of them are sacrifices of fruits and vegetables that you bring and then you burn them.
Well, they're sacrifices for different things. Sin sacrifices were the blood sacrifices of the animals, and then there were other sacrifices
guilt
like
sacrifices. And
those still apply.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yes. I'm going to sacrifice a head of broccoli because I feel guilty about that, piece of chocolate cake that I had last night.
Chocolate cake.
Let's see. It should be a law to be seen in the temple on Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Passover, I guess most people know what Passover is. Shavuot, actually not sure what that one specifically is about. And Sukkot, again, is the festival of the harvest. So everybody should be seen in temple on those holidays to celebrate these three festivals. Again, that goes back to what days are we taking off as national holidays? None of these Jewish holidays that are in the 613 commandments are among those.
Although it kind of worries me because when are you going to get any work done? It seems like we'd be on holiday all the time.
Oh, no, you know what? It was really nice. My first job in Austin was at the Jewish Community Association of Austin. We had all U.S. holidays off and 14 major Jewish holidays off. And I had 3 weeks of paid vacation. It was lovely. It was really great.
Productivity shines.
I did, however, work on Christmas.
Well,
But that was actually my choice. We were allowed that day
That's just
off.
some pagan tree festival day.
I like that. So let's see. The next couple that I'd like to talk about, they actually go into the laws of impurity involving a woman's menstrual cycle, childbirth, and even what you were talking about, a man ejaculating after he has come out. So some of the rituals that go along with that is that anybody you're not allowed to touch anyone who's impure, and that includes a woman, and that's why a man is not allowed to touch a Jewish woman, is because unless she's his wife, he probably doesn't actually know whether or not she's on the rag. So he never touches her because he just kind of assumes all the time, don't choke on your water, he just kind of assumes all the time that she could be on the rag. Oh my God.
I touched a Jewish woman.
And I could be impure. So he's not supposed to touch her. Or, after she's had childbirth. And after she's done with this impure thing, unclean thing, or he, depending on what the impure thing is, you are supposed to take what's called a mikveh. And a mikveh is a ritual bath that you take in water I mean, it's a bath that comes from rain runoff. I mean, you can't fill up your bathtub and take a bath. You actually have to go to a pool that all the water in the entire pool comes from the rain.
Right. It's not like they... Well, go ahead.
They're not actually usually very clean, actually, because so many people bathe in them right after they've been unclean. And you don't, fill it up with chlorine to clean it out again or anything like that.
You got to remember, these laws weren't written at the height of human hygiene either, when they're wandering through the desert and...
a lot of people still practice the mikvah.
Oh, I understand.
I know a lot of people that do, and there are mikvahs here in Austin that you can go to if you practice those. A lot of people in Israel, probably everybody in Israel, still practices the mikvah. You probably go home and shower when you're done.
I doubt that, actually. Since
Really?
50% of Jews in Israel are atheists or non-religious Jews, they probably don't... I know that most of them don't keep the law.
It could be true. I don't know. I mean, the ones I happen to know personally are Orthodox, and they practice that. Some people might just practice it because it's a neat ritual, or I don't know. Could be like those little community baths that they used to have all over the place. Anyway, so let's see. The court must judge. The next ones actually, okay, we're up into 466 now.
Oh, boy.
And we get back into a couple of them that are law today, and they talk about how the court functions. There's a large number of them that talks about how impartial a judge should be. A judge should not pity the victim, nor should it, pity the criminal, nor should it, they should not, let's see, it's against the law to kidnap, it's against the law to rob openly, it's against the law to withhold wages or fail to repay a debt. The court should measure punitive measures against a thief. They should... let's see, it should be against the law to steal. The court should judge, how the cost of damages incurred by a fire. The court should implement laws against one who assaults another or damages another's property. One should not murder. One should not accept monetary restitution. Okay, these ones actually all apply to bail. And they say that if somebody has murdered someone, even if it's like manslaughter, there should be no such thing as bail. They cannot get off on bail. You can't accept monetary exchange for someone's life. So they have to go to jail.
It's not bail, it's fines.
Fines. Isn't that the same thing?
Bail is you're released until your trial. Fines is payment in lieu of serving term.
So fines. You can't accept monetary restitution to atone for murder. The court must send...
and we don't. We don't accept... You can't just pay off your murder. Unless you're really, really rich. Then you get a good lawyer and...
Well, but then it talks about murders, even accidental murderers. They are either killed or sent away to a city of refuge. So basically they're banished. And the court is supposed to set up a city of refuge. There should be a special place, which, as a matter of fact, was New Orleans at one time.
Really?
Yeah. I actually went to New Orleans a couple years ago and took one of those ghost tours, and they were talking about how originally somebody had wanted to set up this city in New Orleans, and nobody wanted to go there to live, and the mayor needed he needed people to fill up this new city of his, so he asked around, and all the different towns and cities ended up sending their thieves and murderers and prostitutes to New Orleans, and that's how the town of New Orleans got started.
It's like a baby Australia.
What?
Australia is entirely peopled with criminals.
I didn't know that. Anyway, so I guess, theoretically you could say New Orleans was sort of one of these cities of refuge where you send murderers and they can never ever come back. You banish them. Let's see.
A couple of good ones, or we want to try and get a calls. We got about 12 minutes left.
No, I think that's the end of the subject, pretty much being pursued. Okay, and then it talks about the one where it's okay to take the life of a pursuer. If somebody's being attacked, you can either kill them or whoever's witnessing the attack. Yeah.
I will shoot you for chasing me. So, you can make the claim, anybody following you in the car, they were tailgating you, screw them, they were pursuing me, I would kill them.
What if the person following you is a cop?
I don't know. What if he's a prophet? Let's, we got William. How you doing?
Yeah, I think I've been called back at like three quick things.
Sure.
One, did Jews ever practice human sacrifice?
No.
Well.
Did they or do they?
Did they, not do.
Did they? Yes. Well, I mean, there's the story of Abraham and his two sons. God commanded him to take his son up to the mountain and sacrifice him, and he said, well, okay, God commands it. He went up to the mountain, and he was about to sacrifice his son, and God said, whoa, I wasn't serious.
Well, yeah. But there's another example where there was a military commander who was getting his ass kicked, and he said, hey, God, if you let me win this, I will sacrifice the first thing that comes out of my house when I come home. Well, he cuts back home, and of course his daughter's the first thing that walks out to greet him, and after letting her go off and spend some time hanging out with her friends, he sacrifices her to God, and God was happy. So yes, human sacrifice is listed in the Bible as being practiced.
And yeah, and again, it's not, I mean, yes, it is there. You can cite places in the Bible, in the Jewish Bible, in Judaism, in history, where that occurred. But I mean, you can cite it today, again, in the army of God, where, you know, God had theoretically commanded them to go kill people. So they did. So, I mean, if your point is that Jews are murderers, you can apply that to pretty much any religion.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't my point. I was just wondering, because I heard this Christian radio talk show guys say that they stopped doing that 1,000 years before Jesus came or something. So I was curious.
Human sacrifice in most cultures probably did die off about 1,000 years before.
Wasn't Jesus a human sacrifice?
Well, yeah.
I don't think it could have ended 1,000 years before Jesus came along if Jesus was sacrificed.
I think we're talking about as generally accepted in culture. Wasn't ever so popular among Jews that it became a huge issue. But yeah, there's notes about not only the one instance in the Bible of an actual human sacrifice, but as she pointed out, when Abram's asked to sacrifice Isaac, and he goes and is ready to do it. I mean, so obviously it's not only something which they were following the commands of God, but it's something that, wasn't necessarily that surprising. I mean, he didn't really sit around and hesitate. This was like a test, but went right on. So yeah, human sacrifices are at least known among Jewish history.
All right, one of the points was, there's the word, I guess this is more for Keryn, is the word goyim, is that like a derogatory word that means like subhuman for like Gentiles or something?
It doesn't mean subhuman, it just means non-Jew, I think.
Yeah, it's only derogatory, and if the person's trying to use it that way.
Yeah, we use it a lot just because it's a funny word.
I'm goy.
You're goy. It's basically the same thing as a Gentile. You got the Jews and the Gentiles. If you're Yiddish, you got the Jews and the goyim. It's really just a Yiddish word for a Gentile. It has been used as derogatory, but it's really not that offensive. It's not usually taken that way. Okay. Most derogatory words are as derogatory as you accept them to be. I mean, but...
The last thing, I haven't read the Talmud. I've been kind of trying to look around for a copy. But I've heard people say that it's like really racist and bad. Are y'all familiar with it?
What?
With what?
The Talmud.
The Talmud?
Yeah.
That's just basically you've got the Tanakh, which is the Jewish Bible, which is roughly equivalent to the Christian Old Testament, which consists of the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, which is the law, the prophets, and the writings. And then you have the Talmud, which is Jewish oral tradition of interpreting those other books and then writing it down. I don't know that it is racist.
I guess racist isn't more like, I guess bigoted would be a better word because it's more like religion instead of
I think you could find certain things that are definitely, bigotous in all throughout. You don't even have to go necessarily to the Talmud. I mean, there's instructions in the Old Testament to Jews about who they can enslave. You can enslave this people, but not, other Jews. And as soon as you start valuing people and placing a value on people who aren't your own as less than yours, yeah, I think you've got problems with bigotry.
But by the Bible, Christians can have Christian slaves, so I guess that's all good.
And they got limits on indentured servants, but the Old Testament goes through and it's like, you hold their ear to the door and drive a stake through it.
And a lot of them, and again, I'm going to say the problem with the Bible is that if you're going to be fundamental about it and take it at its word and never ever update it because that's forbidden, then a lot of it is going to have biases that were not considered bigotry at the time. They were considered, just routine, everyday stuff. That's what the culture was. It's like if you read Shakespeare, Shakespeare was both anti-Semitic and racist,
Yeah, there are things in Darwin's books that are racist, but it's because it was common. It's not necessarily that. I think there are things that people just hadn't really thought about it. You're talking about a pre-Enlightenment or post, different terms of enlightenment, where if everybody says that the black man is an inferior race and that's just like common knowledge and hasn't been challenged, I find it difficult to really fault people for holding that common knowledge. Although it would have been nice if they'd have challenged it. And the good thing is eventually ideas like that did get challenged. And most people woke up to the fact that, hey, you know what? We're all pretty much the same. We're all stuck on this little planet. And I'm not any better than anybody else just because I happen to be, from this part of the world or this particular sexual orientation or, this sex.
And that's one of my big problems with most religions is that, you have to swear yourself to this concept that was written thousands upon thousands of years ago, and you're never allowed to update it, or you're considered not true. I mean, the Reformed Jews versus Orthodox Jews. Reformed Jews update a lot of the stuff. If you read any Reformed Jewish version of the Bible, it never uses him to refer to God. It always either just says God, or it says, usually it just says God, or it says Almighty. I mean, it uses as many gender-free words wherever it's required. It'll say God, maybe it'll say Lord. I think it actually doesn't even use Lord.
Most of them would just be...
It might be Lord. It might include Lord. But, they update them. And the Jewish prayers, they no longer just say... the father, blessed are my fathers, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. It'll actually say Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Rivkah and Leah. But Orthodox Jews and Hasidic Jews don't recognize Reformed Jews as true because they update the Bible to modern times and they try and make it mesh with today's culture.
I want to ask you, do y'all know anything about how the Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews, like their kind of history and how they split or whatever?
What about them?
From what I understand, the Sephardic Jews are like actual Semites along with Arabs, and Ashkenazi Jews are European Jews or something.
Yeah. Sephardic Jews usually come from Hispanic traditions. I actually know some Sephardic Jews from Mexico. I've met Sephardic Jews from Spain, and they do come from, those histories from a specific part of the world where they were. Oh, I guess we're wrapping up to the end of the show.
Yeah, we're about out of time. We'll go ahead and she'll keep answering that, but I'm going to have to let you go.
And they do
Thanks
follow,
a lot for calling.
They do follow different practices and customs and traditions that were kind of local to that region. So, if you're following Passover in Sephardic Judaism, you're not allowed to eat certain foods. In Ashkenazic Judaism, there's a whole much longer list of foods you're not allowed to eat that Sephardics don't recognize because, those foods didn't even exist in their culture, so they couldn't say don't eat those on these specific times of the year. Or maybe I'm getting that mixed up, but they come from different parts of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, well, even being Jewish, you're not required to be an expert on all things Jewish.
A lot of Sephardic prayers are actually written in Spanish. So
good stuff.
Yeah, and I got barely over halfway through the 613 commandments. Maybe I can follow up with them on my next show.
Come in with a couple hundred more.
613 commandments, part 2.
We're down to about right at a minute right now. We're not going to have the time to take any other calls. Just as a reminder, if you didn't get through to ask your question, or if you didn't want to call but still would like to get a question answered, you can email tv@atheist-community.org, and there are also a number of other methods that you can use to get in touch with us, along with dinner after the program tonight. For those who are local, we'll be going to Threadgill's. Be there between 6:30 and 6:45. Don't forget to visit the website, atheist-community.org, for information about all of our events, and other ways to contact us, including email lists. And thank you all for watching. And for those of you who are downloading or listening by podcast, we appreciate your support as well. And let your friends know if they'd be interested in the show. See you next time.